Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michele. We're going to be talking about innovation today, and I had intended to share my greatest hope for innovation, which is still the same, but I had an incident over the weekend that's shifted how I'm going to share my greatest hope. So I actually had an accident over the weekend, and friends and family, if you're hearing this for the first time, I'm sorry, this is not the best way for you to hear it, but I didn't want you to worry. And although my friend who sat in the hospital with me all day and I had a good time laughing about the inappropriate social posts that we could put out, like, here's my wristband in the emergency room, hashtag I've had better days, hashtag blessed. We had a good time thinking about that, but I just felt like in the moment it would be best to just keep the people that knew to a small circle so I could touch base with everybody personally later. So what happened was Saturday morning, I woke up like any other day. I was thirsty. I went to the refrigerator to get a glass of water. I felt myself getting dizzy, and I fell straight back onto my cement floor. I live in a loft. Have no idea how long I was out. When I came to, I did the normal Stephanie thing, and if you know me, you'll know that the Stephanie thing is access all variables quickly. What's going on here? I couldn't move right away. I tried to kind of turn over and saw that there was a puddle of blood, and so I quickly, or really slowly assessed, what should I do? Moving very slowly might be a good idea. Continued to scooch myself to where I keep my towels. Had a bump in my head where it was bleeding, and tried to stop that. And then I proceeded to send a couple people texts like, I don't think I'm going anywhere today, and maybe you should check on me. And of course, one of those texts was to my mother, who called right away and said, you've had a head injury before and you need to go to emergency. So my wonderful friend, Deanna, can't thank you enough, came to get me, and him and I spent the day in emergency. You might be wondering why or how this relates to innovation, and I will tell you. After experiencing the whole day in a hospital in the emergency room, I know that one of the main areas in our industry, in our country, that absolutely needs innovation is healthcare. But I'm going to peel it back to my hope for innovation, which is a little bit different. So first, just let me tell you some of the things that happened while I was there. First thing, this was a great fun thing. So an unidentifiable nurse, never introduces herself, comes into the room, or comes into our little emergency bed and starts sticking her finger in my bloody head. Never identifies herself, not even as much as a hi, I'm nurse whoever, and leaves. I'm like, okay, that's odd. You just touched my bloody head and never said hello. Something's a little off here. So I'm experiencing this. I experienced like two people that are called hospital transport. They're just two gentlemen, doing their job with a little handy recorder, reporting like where they're taking me along the path to like tests. I had several different scans and things done, and one of the gentlemen was new to the system, and it was explaining to me how weird it was, like at what points he had to record where we were. Like he didn't have to record making contact with the patient, but he had to record when I moved in different directions, and it was a little odd, and he was having a hard time learning it. Nice guy, but just really focused on this new system. And one of my most unfavorable moments about the experience was the billing guy. So before any assessments have been made about why I passed out and what's going on, or anybody attending to my bleeding head, a person came in. He had jeans on, a sweatshirt, and a surgical mask, and has a bunch of paperwork that he's shoving in my face and saying, where's your insurance card? We need to get your credit card. He takes it. He comes back and tells me I have no health insurance. Now, I'm paying a ridiculous amount every month. I know damn well I have health insurance. I know my plan is current, but he shoved two pieces of paper in front of me saying, you don't, I looked it up, you don't. And then it got really accusatory, like, yeah, I've been down this path before. Everybody says they have health insurance. So that was fun. Not great bedside manner. And then to find out later, I had to actually call my healthcare provider, and I'm going to call them out. It's HealthNet, and you suck, and I'll tell you why you suck so bad in a minute. I had to call them on, I guess, yesterday to say, hey, what the hell happened here, you know? And their explanation was, oh, he was looking into the 2017 system and he needed to be looking into the 2018 system. And I'm like, what the hell? It's like, we're almost done with the first quarter. Like, how is it that there's not better communication, that there's a new system, and why is there a new system? Like, what happened in your innovation process that people have not communicated to each other that this is going on? And I had this misfortunate, experience of, I'm already in a stressful environment, and this guy is like spiking my blood pressure, telling me that I don't have insurance. So obviously there's some things, I didn't even get to the best part. This is my paperwork. This is my paperwork from leaving the hospital, and there's some great fun stuff in here that I want to share with you. Like the first line, I get this. It's like, we examined and treated you today for an emergency basis only, covering their basis, like, hey, we just want to make sure you're not in an emergency state so we can release you, but they're not there to treat me or tell me what's wrong, which I still don't know what happened. Then from here down, for the next 3 pages, is something about child safety seats, which obviously is not applicable to me. Goes on to here, so I'm not sure why I got this, but there's something in this that said patient was given educational information. So child safety seats, I know about that now. That has nothing to do with me. And then a list of all the tests that were run. Then a blank page, because, let's waste a tree. And then I love this part. You have a head injury. No shit. Thank you. I kind of knew that, but thank you for telling me that and putting a picture of the brain. Isn't that great? You have a head injury. And then all the things to kind of look for. This is awesome. Don't stress yourself out. Apparently the person in billing did not get the same paperwork as I did because I wasn't too concerned about that. Lots of things to do to follow up. An explanation of what happens when you faint. Thank you for that. Another blank page. What medication I was given in the hospital. That's important. All the tests that were run that nobody went over with me. Another almost blank page. More tests. Fun words and fun grammar on the next couple pages. These are pages about the tests that were run and the assessment, and nobody went over this with me. I just want you to know, no human person at the hospital went over this paperwork with me. And then there's words like unremarkable on limited views. What the hell is that? Like, that's the assessment. I'm unremarkable. I mean, it's said several times, unremarkable. I
disagree, by the way.
Oh, really? Thanks a lot. I'm not ever going to let you talk, by the way. Anyhow, it goes on. And my favorite part, and I don't mean to call out the hospital on this. I think that, what I experience is an issue of, not being funded. Like, we have a situation where healthcare, it's more than just having affordable healthcare. It's about, changing and innovating how it's done and helping there. Obamacare, the Affordable Act, was helping more people have health care, but there's a whole other thing that needs to happen. But unfortunately, this hospital sent me home with somebody else's prescriptions too. So there's that. So there's all this paperwork that really doesn't help me feel better, and it's confusing. But it's more about, for me, it's like, if there's anything that needs to be innovated, like before we look at the healthcare system, is just how we're relating with each other. Like, where was it okay for someone to stick their finger in my bloody head without even saying hello? Where was it okay for a person dressed in very casual clothes with a surgical mask to get really accusatory with me that I may not have health insurance while I'm lying on an emergency bed? Like, we need to look at this. How we're relating is horrible. Horrible, and it needs to change. And this is what I would have shared if I hadn't had this experience. And I had a weird kind of thing this morning that I was reflecting on. I think I recently saw the recent Blade Runner movie, and the moments in the movie where Ryan Gosling's character, his hybrid human AI character, goes through this diagnostic test after assignments that seem to check if to make sure the machine is still wired to suit humanity. And my concern right now is maybe we should be asking if humanity is wired for humanity. If we're speeding towards innovation and not really looking at who we're talking to, or are asking people, different people, involving more people into what we're doing, I'm a little concerned. My other question is, how far are we willing to go to let things go over our own well-being? We have addictive tech, we have media hacking our brains and our relationships, and people in power and control that are showing no signs of empathy towards humanity, and I'm concerned. This is always going to be my thing. The unfortunate thing about innovating how we're relating is it's a personal choice everybody has to take. They have to kind of wake up and look and what, I'm not doing really great. I'm not having great experiences with people, and I need to do something. I need to change. I need to innovate how I'm connecting with people, and I need to care, and I need to show up. And all I can do is kind of encourage people to do things, and maybe encourage companies to look at that. But it's a personal choice, and yet I think it's really, really important and a big question that we have to look at in terms of anything that we're going to innovate in any industry. So I don't know. The last thing that I want to say about this, I'm surprised I got through this without crying, by the way, because just feeling a lot of, I'm feeling, and I've experienced a lot of disconnect to people actually being connected to each other, and it scares me and it concerns me. And I guess the last thing that I want to say about that is we need to wake up, wise up, and work together, and talk to people outside of our own bubbles, and demand and create and shape innovation, not just for the sake of innovation, but for the sake of each other. So, sorry to have that and then have you. So my guest today and I are going to really talk about...
I'm just going to go now.
Yeah, you're like, oh, shit. Is she anti-innovation? And I'm not. I hope you...
No, of course not.
Yeah, I hope you hear
But the moral of your story, though, don't get thirsty.
Yeah. Well, that's what my mom is so cute. She's like, honey, I think you should be using plastic glasses from now on. Because I did break a glass. I do have a couple little cuts, from the glass. But yeah, the moral of the story... No, she said glass by the bed.
Yeah. Or like a giant straw system that goes right to your pillow.
IV. Yeah, maybe. All right. Well, before we go too much further without me introducing this wonderful gentleman next to me, this is Chris Denson. He is an award-winning innovator, marketer, and recovering comedian, if you might have guessed already. And he's the host of Innovation Crush interview series. Chris is an expert at uncovering the best thinking and commonalities across a diverse array of cultures. Amen to that. He's applying his expertise to the likes of the White House, Google, Launchpad, C2, Montreal, Omnicom Media Group. His work has been featured in Adweek, Forbes, New York Times, Inc., to name a few. Chris currently serves as the director of Omnicom Media Group at Ignition Factory. The key group responsibility. I have head injuries, so I can make as many mistakes as I want to today. I just want to let you know. The key group's responsibility for emerging innovations across media, technology, and culture for Fortune 50 clients, including Warner Brothers, Wells Fargo, CW, Hilton, ASICS, and more. Chris is the author of Crushing the Box, 10 Essential Rules for Breaking Essential Rules. Welcome, my friend.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you for being here. So I ask everybody that sits in this chair before...
In that chair or this chair?
That chair.
Okay.
That chair. Before we get started, is there anything that you want to, I just ranted, I got to rant. Is there anything that you want to get off your chest before we get into the topic of innovation today?
Your story steals the cake.
I'm not trying to steal the cake. It is my, hey man, it's my show.
Is it take the cake or steal the cake?
It is my show.
At least if I fumble, I have no excuse.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think one of the things I was thinking about was just coming fresh off the anti-guns march.
Yeah.
And I'm a proud NR, and I'm just kidding. But no, I've been thinking about now what, right? It's one thing to gather and rally and bring out celebrities and the kids who were victims, of the most recent shooting. Not that, but then what?
Yeah.
Right. How do you close the loop? How do you take it to the next level? And I feel like we're finding that with a lot of hashtag movements.
Yeah.
And they are moving the needle. I'm not taking away from that, but I do think what is that next step where it's really impactful? It's because I think the government can watch people gather, the NRA, the gun manufacturer, everybody who's involved can watch, go okay, cool, go back to work on Monday and continue doing what you do. Absolutely.
The two things that come up for me on that topic is, one is when did we lose the value of human life to begin with? Like, what, why are we so, why are some people that are so attached to their guns so not understanding about, like, hey, we're just talking about human life, we want to value that. And then two is, we live in a time where the media cycle is just full of trauma, and there's going to be a next story that takes over this, and people forget, and it's just like, you want to stay hopeful that people stay on topic and stay on purpose, but there's so much, and And
you couple that with like the snowflake generation, or just how there's this hypersensitivity around what's happening in the world and who said what and what brand did X, Y, and Z, and it's like everybody's angry. So like, how do you keep track?
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, I'm like, am I part of that snowflake generation? Because I care so deeply about the experiences that I'm having with people and other people. Everybody talks about it and we joke about it because we've accepted it as a social norm. The kinds of exchanges that we have via social media or online dating, or being in an elevator filled with people and everybody's head buried into the phone. And it's just like, hey, we've kind of gone too far if we've accepted this as a social norm that, it's not cool to say, hey, buddy, how are you? Or like ask a funny question or whatever. So is that snowflake, or is this just me being an innovator in a space that nobody's really talking about? I don't know. You're going to tell me.
Maybe.
Maybe. I want to use your rules to innovate how we relate. So
awesome.
So first, if we're going to talk about innovation, let's just start with a basic definition of innovation. What do you call, what's the definition of innovation?
It's like Beelzebub. It has so many different names.
Yeah.
Not to bring up Satan on your show.
Yeah, thanks.
I think that's the first.
We're off to a good start.
No, I look at it as sort of a reimagining or reinvention of how we connect with the world around us. In some instances, it's like vast developments in technology. In others, it's just like you said, how can we reinvent customer service, in a real space? So it's that, and just with my show and with the book and the work that I've done, because I've worked across so many different spectrums and industries and different sort of cultural corners. You start to see that commonality is like the spirit of reinvention, and then you look to one thing that I love that art exhibition that used VR and augmented reality, and then you're like, how can I apply to me in the medical field? Could that be used in the sense of your experience at the hospital? So I think it's that sort of that idea of reimagination with purpose, I guess.
Are there signs that a certain company or an industry actually absolutely just needs to innovate and make some changes? What are some of those?
If you are a company, you need to innovate.
That's just survival.
Yeah, I think it's just, as we progress, even as you were thinking about like, why is gun violence a thing? I was thinking about Westerns, and we, I think, historically just glorified sort of the conquering So, but over time, like that message and that human need, and is that a relevant story anymore? And from pure entertainment value, sure. As from a cultural standpoint, let's be a little bit more exploratory. And look at, there's plenty of writings on the wall. You take like the Blockbusters, where like Reed Hastings like walked into Blockbuster and said, "Hey, I got this thing. You want to buy it?" And they're like, "Nah, we're good." And you find it a lot. It's like just losing a spirit of experimentation, with your company.
I think always of I think of taxi cab drivers and Uber. I think like, if you've traveled anywhere and you've been in a taxi, it's not like the most pleasant experience, but like these people, the taxi cab drivers were pretty like, man, this is how it is. I can treat you like crap and overcharge you. It's the number one scam in different countries of like giving you back the wrong currency or, or fake currency. And so I think when someone gets really settled in, like, oh, this is the way it is, it's like, you're ripe for innovation. Like taxi cab drivers didn't see Uber coming to, save, or taxi cab companies couldn't see that happening, but
you get stuck in a pattern of habit. Right? And it's like, this is how we do it, and it's comfortable, it works, and then suddenly another entity or just the cultural appetite for what it is you offer is changing. And you're like, what are some of the signs that it's time to maybe stop innovation, or innovation's gone too far? Can you? I guess it depends on what field you're in, but I think if if you're getting ahead of consumer adoption, I think because technology allows us to do so much doesn't mean that people are going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I don't want to make technology synonymous with innovation, but in that regard, it is, like I spoke at a conference last year, and my next slide was going to be about like a VR project I had done. And 1,200 people in the audience, I go like, hey, how many people here have tried a VR experience?
Yeah.
3 people raised their hand. And these are people from all over the country. And I think sometimes if you're in LA or New York or like a progressive kind of state or city, we do a lot of talking to each other, like industry-wise.
Yeah.
And then, but this VR can do this, and then we could take a 3D model of a person. It's like, but who's actually doing it?
Yeah.
Right. Is there a consumer adoption, or one of my favorite examples is the 3D television, and you're like. It was almost like those infomercials are like, if you get one now, and everybody got them, and then all of a sudden it's like you maybe watched one. I think the average was like 3 3D experiences on that television. So was there a real need, and did consumers actually want it, versus what we are actually technically capable of doing?
Right. It's like there's a lot of times it feels like when something comes out, it's like the powers that be, whether it be the marketing firms or advertising firms, they have this bigger vision of what it's supposed to be used for, but they haven't really thought about, the momentum of getting there and just like talking about that. So like I think the last time I had an upgrade on my phone, the big push was, well, you get a free, worth $129 VR set. And I'm like, I don't want it. And the woman was like, why? It's worth $129. I'm like, I'm just not ready for that. I'm not a gamer. I don't see like a big need for that right now. Like I don't need another thing to learn. My time is more important to me. My relationships are more important to me. So that was a big turnoff for it. But do I know about some of the things that are happening in VR and how it's going to help people? Yeah, there's some good stuff out there. But as a consumer, it's not for me right now, So I think that's sometimes like they just don't think about like the demographic of who they're trying to introduce it to, and then it takes longer for people to adapt.
Exactly. No, and I think you look at like, even in the realm of VR, it's like Facebook buying Oculus, and like the industry was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now let's keep making experiences. They're going to do this by the boatloads of people. And people are like, oh, man.
Yeah. Well, even remember when like video conferences, how long it took people to really be interested
the video
in
phone, remember?
Yeah. You're like it's like, look, I look terrible on this thing. First of all, that's whatever. Right. Most people, not just women. I'm not going to just call it myself. Most people are like, yeah, it doesn't look good. I don't need people to see this, But yeah, it takes a while sometimes, and
those should come with a free stylist.
They should,
Video phone
and
plus,
like excellent lighting and a tutorial how to take a selfie.
Whole production studio comes with your video phone.
Exactly. So what are some of the areas that you personally want to see more innovation take place?
Hospitals.
Yeah, right?
Jesus.
Healthcare. I mean,
no, I mean, yes, but I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is like the nonprofit space, I think unfortunately there's a very antiquated way of asking for help and getting people help that they need. And so, so that process could use some overhaul. And there's a few, you find like business models that kind of help, like a Tom Shoes, for instance, right? Where it's like, okay, every time you buy a shoe, we're going to help somebody who needs them, or backpacks or sunglasses, whatever it is. But I mean, if you look at the millions of causes that are out there, I just interviewed the director of innovation at the Ad Council, and at any given time, they are supporting 40 different causes. And they're constantly trying to find, ways to sort of re-engage people and garner their interest in that. And there's some blips that are happening, but as far as like an overall, general practice of how we do it has not been introduced yet.
Yeah. Do you know about Time Well Spent in Humane Technology, the Foundation for Humane Technology?
I don't.
So Time Well Spent, I'm going to send it to you after us, and I'll share it in the archives. So there's this great video out on YouTube, and first backing up. It's a group of people that have left Facebook and Google. It's like the social architects that have like, you know what, we've sort of gone too far. You know,
Right.
just because we can make an addictive sound alert on our phone and a color and all this stuff, you know, should.
Excuse me.
You know, bless you. That was not an addictive sound, by the way. But, you know, just because we can, we shouldn't, and we need to peel back. Like all the things, the messages that we're getting through social media, like, maybe, you know, like there's a lot of addictiveness and a lot of these apps and things. So there's actually a group of people, Facebook, Google, architects have started this company, and a lot of VC money backing it to start putting out some regulation. And like, I think of things like, you know, I manage vendor accounts for Amazon for clients. It's an archaic system. It's full of flaws. And I'm like, you know, I should get a warning when something's down on your system, even if it's just dorky little orange cones, so I can make the decision of not investing hours of my time in frustration because I'm the user, like, well, I don't know what's going on, right? Yeah. So starting to look at these things, like, you know, allowing someone to have more knowledge about the choices that they're making and the potential impact.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well, you know, it's funny, the thing about addictive behavior is that it is hard to change. When we think about addiction, we think about like cigarettes or, you know, alcohol or, you know, drugs, which I enjoy. I'm kidding. But it's...
Well, I have some prescriptions for like...
Well, speaking of which, so there's a dog in the studio and I'm allergic, so that's why I sneezed.
Oh.
But I'm okay. I didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know.
I mean, I knew I was allergic. I didn't know there was a dog.
Okay.
But, you know, looking at just where those opportunities can kind of come from and evolve.
Yeah, so. Totally. All right, so I pulled some just recent news for us to talk about. But I want to, before we get there, I want to talk about the 10 essential rules. So talk me through some of these rules and like how they really apply to like help people innovate. And you can maybe even use the example that I want to innovate. Like, is there anything in here in these rules
it's funny you say that because every chapter kind of starts off with you know, sort of an oddball metaphor, right?
Yeah.
So the very first one is swim like an otter. I should know this. Swim like an otter.
And hold hands with your buddy otter.
Yes, exactly.
I love those memes. I'm sorry.
Or your otter buddy.
Yeah, your otter buddy. That's
I'm having an otter body experience.
That's hilarious.
That's what I should have called it. Dang it! Can I rewrite the book?
Yes, you can.
No. So there's a guy who works for NASA. He's their artist in residence.
Okay.
He's been there for 15 years. You know, very unsuspected. Like, oh, NASA has an artist in residence. That was my reaction when I first learned of his job. And he's been there for 15 years. But he also does, you know, helps turn their scientific experiments or scientific concepts into public art exhibitions.
Yeah.
You know, like experience the speed of light or sound or things like that. And when he was in art school, his professor said, hey, draw a picture of an otter, right? That was one of his assignments. He drew it, turned it in. The professor says, okay, tomorrow morning, meet me at the swimming pool. And he showed him a video of an otter swimming, and he had him get in the pool and swim like an otter. And the whole chapter starts to explore this idea of empathy.
Yeah.
Right? What's it like to be in the shoes of that subject, or in the fur? What do otters have? The fur of that subject.
They're just cute. They have a lot of cuteness, Chris.
They're covered in cute.
They're just cute.
And so, you know, I think as innovators or inventors or whatever, like when you're creating something, it's like truly understanding the community you're trying to affect. Or if you're running a health organization, a hospital, or insurance, is like, you know, the fact that your head got poked around. First of all, I don't know if you were actually at a hospital. Sounds like you were.
I was in an emergency.
Yeah.
I don't blame it was a good hospital actually.
Right.
You know, but definitely, you know, it's not like any TV drama that we're seeing with computer. They weren't running around with like iPads everywhere. And obviously, I have 30 pages of paperwork. You know.
Right, exactly.
But
I mean, you know, it's like you discover the pain points by actually doing the thing that you know you're servicing. Experience the service for yourself in some way, shape, or form. Go to another hospital and like pretend you have a headache. I'm just saying, if you're going to invent like the new sort of healthcare app, right?
Yeah.
And so going to a hospital and going through the process of getting the paperwork and having someone come in and you don't know and didn't introduce themselves and say, okay, here's the pieces of the puzzle we need to change. Because most of us have, just a general assumption, or we live in a headline culture where you read like, here's the 5 things you need to know about healthcare, and you're like, cool,
I call that fast food content.
I'm a guru, like, or the social guru title on someone's social media handle.
If you've watched the show, you know that I do not like the word guru, or and we call all of those top 10 fast food content,
right?
Which I think is making us unwell in many ways.
Exactly, but it gives us like a false sense of knowledge.
Yeah, without context.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so until you go there and do that, and
Yeah.
I've done it a number of times in my career. Like at one point, I did work in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
I'd never been a gamer. I played maybe 3 games up until that point, but
Halo.
Nope,
No.
it was God of War, Tekken. And this other game is called Blast Chamber.
None of them I know.
I just dated myself even when it comes to video games. And so, but that was going to Comic-Con, going to PAX East, and going to the LA Games Conference, and actually hanging out with the community and starting to play the games, and really, as opposed to coming in and being prescriptive and like, all right, guys, I got it.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's really taking that time to listen and experience. So anyway, that's just sort of one concept that really I felt like really spoke to your experience.
Yeah. So having
week.
empathy, I think what's coming up for me and what you shared too, it's like the sequence in which you carry out things. Like, I mean, if people were to call me from this hospital today when I'm still like kind of, I have a follow-up appointment with my doctor tomorrow, like I really still don't know what's happened. I'm irritated by the experience. Like, they're not going to get they need to assess the feedback that they're getting based on the experience I'm still having. And so like having a better way to kind of sequence when you ask somebody, it's
right.
like you're not going to ask someone for a referral when you're in the middle of a crisis, or like, hey, refer your buddy to this app and you haven't used it yet. There's a sequence in
or if
which
I've given all my Uber drivers 3 stars,
right?
Like I complain all the time, it's like refer a friend. We'll give you, not that I've done that, but the algorithm is based on repetition, not like sentiment.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that came up for me and what you shared, so you talked about empathy, sequence, and like asking different people. So as you move into these different industries, like what you did in one to determine empathy or to really understand is not going to be the same in another,
exactly.
right? It's
I was at Art Basel. We brought an artificial intelligence experience to Art Basel, and it was all like art based, obviously.
Tell people what that is, and just in case they don't know.
Art Basel Miami, Art Basel Switzerland. Didn't
Big
go to
art
Switzerland.
show.
I went to it's like the largest art event in the country. I want to say it happens in Miami every year, and also in Switzerland. And you've got like I was actually housed at the Sagamore Hotel, which is like the #1 arts hotel at that. In Miami, they curated this whole like street art exhibition with Banksy and Keith Haring and Basquiat and just a bunch of others. But part of that, like, I'm no art expert, right? And I wouldn't be able to tell you which is the Banksy versus the Keith Haring, or
I know that, Chris.
some kid that just painted and
finger painted.
Yeah, charged me $25,000 for it. Hey, wait a second, come back here. But yeah, so in that community, it's still the same thing. Asking questions and not only that, it's like people love to talk about their craft, right?
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we don't want to look stupid, and we don't want to feel like we don't belong. But if you ask the questions the right way, which you probably know from interviewing, obviously, is that people will tell you, they'll fill in the gaps for you.
We talk a lot about questions on the show. I'm an advocate of why questions. Mm-hmm. You interview people too, and you'll go right away when I say this if you have never thought about this. So when we ask people what, you kind of like generally know, okay, I know a little bit about what's going on here. But when you ask people why, you really know, you get to the depth of like what motivates them. And it's the same way in like how in relating, like you have a lot of what friends. I mean, I live in LA, we have a lot of what friends that know what we do, but people that know why you do what you do, you have a deeper connection with them. So I'm a big advocate for questions at all times. And there's also that part of relating that seems to needs to happen
Yeah.
again. Like we're not asking questions, we're not being innovative enough in the types of questions that we're asking to
Yeah.
get to the answers that we need to get to.
It's like, I mean, this goes back to like 5th grade science.
Yeah.
It's like the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Right? Every time when you do a science, like,
Yeah.
why did this happen? Okay, and that happened. It happened because of that. Well, why did that happen?
Yeah.
And then that happened because of this. Well, then why did that happen?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's the same thing in sort of conversation. But it's also just like in some cases, I think curiosity like that is a muscle. Right?
Absolutely.
And getting in the habit of maybe in the case of what I said before, is like getting over yourself.
Yeah.
If that's your barrier of entry to like being a curious conversational person.
I believe that if we, we've got a lot of things that are helping us speed up judgment. The social media highlight rule. Highlight reel rather. Lots of judgment in our society. Lots of judgment that we're even taking place in, and we goof around about it, but it's judgment. If we could slow down that and speed up curiosity, things would be significantly different.
Slow down judgment, speed up curiosity. I'm stealing that.
Yeah,
Chapter 11.
Please quote me, man. I mean, please give me credit. It was this woman. She had head injury. I'm just kidding. No,
She won't remember.
She won't remember. Anyhow, so okay, give me like one more rule out of here. Give me your favorite one.
Let me see that thing. Hold on.
Really?
No, well, I don't have a let's see. I want favorite versus relevant.
Okay.
Flee like a refugee is a good one.
Flee like a refugee?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Flee like a refugee is basically, I interviewed this guy named Bassem Youssef, who's sort of like the Egyptian Jon Stewart.
Okay.
Right, so at the height of Jon Stewart being on The Daily Show, I think he got about 3 million viewers a week.
Yeah.
This guy had 16 million viewers a week. And so, even was on The Daily Show a few times. But of course here we have comedic political rhetoric. It's like, ha, 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 going about your day.
Yeah.
In that part of the world, it was like, you start to be in personal danger.
Yeah.
And so I think right in the midst of his 3rd season, he was getting, frivolous lawsuits,
Oh my goodness.
death threats. There was even a documentary done about his experience called Tickling Giants. And there's a scene where the woman walks into like the production room and she's like, hey, it's getting hectic outside. If you guys want to go home and work from home, that's fine. And it's like, none of us have that in our jobs here.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming in like, we're in danger today, so if you want to go home, you can. And so it got so bad for him that he actually emigrated to Canada and then moved to the United States. And this is all like in the past year. And so, the chapter actually kind of just refers to risk, right?
Yeah.
Like how much risk are you willing to take for that innovation that you want, the thing that you want to bring forth into the world. For some, it's not going to be that extreme, obviously, but in some cases it might be your family's livelihood, like a lifestyle you need to give up for a few years in hopes of achieving something greater. And there's varying levels and degrees and severities of risk, but we start to just examine that, even to the point of I'm going to keep going back to your example, but in the healthcare system, right? There's a great risk to like, okay, I'm going to be the one who changes this. Whether you're shunned or regulations or you get blacklisted, there's a number of different consequences that can come along with that territory. And so, how do you assess that risk, and how do you even like get out of your own head or get out of your own way in some ways, and like really assess what real risk is versus perceived risk?
And I mean, all that's coming up for me when you're sharing that is how much communication you need to like, okay, if I personally am taking risk and I have a family, what does that look like? How much do we sit down and say, hey, is it worth it? What other allies do we need? What's going to happen if we do this? Like, weigh the pros and cons and all the variables. Like how? Ugh.
I mean, even in that chapter, I tell like a personal story. I have a 12-year-old daughter now, and at the time, when she must have been almost a year old. And long story short, I was living out of my car, and we talked about the Michigan factor earlier. And I grew up in Detroit, and was like, I should move home. And I don't know if it was pride or ego or embarrassment or just belief, or some combination of all of those things, that I was like, let me stick it out. And
Yeah.
it was like you see the needle falling, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I should get out of this. I should get out of it. You're like, you're at rock bottom. You're like, I should have left, right? Or should have stopped, or I should have pivoted, or whatever it is. And at that point in time, it was like there was a lot of risk in my life that I was calculating. Like, okay, well, do I put my personal fulfillment aside and for this greater good, and so on and so forth. So, and there's no right answer to what the decision tree is.
And this is a very, I would suspect for anybody listening to this or watching this, like if you don't relate to this conversation, maybe you've never experienced being an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur, I don't know, once you've had this experience, it's kind of hard not to want to be an entrepreneur, because there's something about momentum. Like you're like, I know I'm so far into it, I'm just going to go a little bit further, because I believe in this. I want to make change, or I want to do something, but and then risk sort of becomes a part of your culture and your makeup, and then you maybe change how you deal with it, but you make friends with it. You get real comfortable with risk.
No, I agree. I think, was it a good majority of the things we worry about never happen? And so,
absolutely.
I think the more you achieve like levels of success, even if it's just a baby step, not like, oh, $10 million, or is it just like, okay, that person returned that email, good, all right? And it's like just enough to keep going. It's just that process of leaving the fear of what could or couldn't happen behind, because the muscle is such that you kind of get used to the process.
Totally. So you make friends with it. All right, well, let's look at some headlines about innovation. Let's just kind of see how you feel about them, and if you want to throw a rule in here to talk about this, let's do it. So I just pulled a couple. So the first one that kind of caught my eye was, does a new association to promote digital innovation have Amazon's fingerprints all over it? And so I can just read you a couple sentences from this. So Amazon is unhappy with Amazon Web Group, actually. So Amazon Web Group is unhappy with how its point of view around electronic commerce, cloud computing, and digital innovation more broadly is being represented in Capitol Hill. So we're talking about lobbyists and things within the executive branch by the existing industry association and organizations. So it's leading an effort to create a new organization. I could read more. Where are your thoughts going on this? So
just around the idea of digital innovation and Amazon, or
the idea of Amazon being
this?
in our government and creating an organization where they're heading up. So this is from the association is called the Alliance for Digital Innovation, and this is from a brochure they've put out, is a coalition of customer-focused commercial companies helping to shape government IT moderation efforts through advocacy, through leadership and efforts. Citizens deserve the same technology experience in their civic lives as they have come to expect in their personal and professional lives, and government mission owners deserve fast and unimpeded access to commercial technologies.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I think in that case, it seems well intended, right? And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think in a lot of ways, government agencies are sort of antiquated. City of LA just a couple of years ago had their first chief innovation officer, and they were the first in the country to do it, right? And so you have things like connected bus shelters. So if you're waiting for the bus, you now have access to Wi-Fi, right? Or organizing all of the city's municipal functions in one website. So if you need to go to the fire department or 311, like it's all under one banner. So I think there's these efficiencies because we all live somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So and a current administration is a little bit tangled. So it's bringing in a different voice, and who knows if it'll work or not, but I think the effort is important.
Yeah.
It's definitely an important one. And honestly, who better? I feel like Jeff Bezos is a well-intended leader. And unlike, for instance, when Travis Kalanick was involved with the Trump administration, I don't know if he was there to buddy up with Trump, but I think it was more like there's a voice of Silicon Valley in the White House. And unfortunately, he wasn't his ethical code didn't quite stand up, and so that faltered. So I think is who's doing it, who's the best intended, and like really keeping the citizen in mind.
Got it. I have a little bit of a different approach on this article. So yes, sounds great, well intended. Let's see. I have equal frustrations with Amazon products, not consumer facing, but like as a vendor and like, just the system that's really running that. Anything Google, anything medical, and anything government. And so I'm like, okay, it's great.
It's pretty much everything.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything. But I'm like, there's certain things that we've come to expect as a consumer that, the frustration of like, you ever gone to do something with Google and it's like, oh, it's some weird thing with your password or Google Analytics, and, half an hour later, 7 tabs open, you still don't have the solution.
Right.
It's just like, I just hope, I have hope, but I have concerns that this Amazon being ahead of this without having a bigger look at like what they're doing to kind of just clean up stuff. It's like, yeah, I hope Jeff has great intentions, but his hands are in everything right now. And I know my own personal life and what my hands are involved in. I feel like I'm spread a little thin. Yeah. So I wonder.
Look, they're all flawed systems, right? Yeah. I mean, Amazon doesn't work. Louis C.K. had a great line.
So why can't we fix the one first before we go and try to do something else? Like is that anti-innovation? Do we not we just have to keep moving everything forward without maybe innovating and fixing?
It's funny you bring that up. After the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, we kind of went on this road show explaining the best things that came out of CES. And one of the opening slides was a can of Duff beer. And it was we used a quote from Homer Simpson, which said, beer is both the answer to and the cause of all of life's problems. And we were like, it's the same thing with technology. Yeah. Right? It is the answer to a lot of things, but it's also causing a lot of problems. And you'll start to see you're piling on things. Somebody referred to this as, I forgot, it was some sort of debt. But the idea is like you build something, you don't build it quite the way it should be built, but you need an MVP.
Just moving the depth.
Right, yeah. And so now you have to go back and do the work, and pretty soon you can only get so far. Go so far back in the order of development. So it's just this idea of it's all none of it is perfect. And Louis C.K. I was going to say had a great line about it too. He said it's like, oh, Verizon sucks. He's like, well, then you go make it. Right, like you go make Verizon. Yeah. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. Yeah. Even the whole issue that's going on with Facebook now. Shout out to Facebook Live. But somebody said, Mark Zuckerberg didn't expect that his product would affect an election. He was like, I just wanted when it was a .edu, I just wanted college kids to connect with each other, and then. A dozen or so.
Wanted to rate the appearance of girls, Chris. Let's be real.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
I mean, the guy probably had a hard time finding girlfriends in college, and he's like, "Oh, let's do this."
Exactly.
That's how it started. But yeah, I mean,
so no one has that kind of foresight.
He didn't know, but
right.
he didn't know that it was going to happen, or he couldn't predict that. But once it did, this has been out for a long time. Now that the fact that it's taken him so long to kind of take some responsibility for it's a little discerning.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm saying too, right? Yeah. You keep going forward. And you're like, oh
yeah. But that I guess all I'm saying, poor Chris. He's here in a day talking about innovation.
No, I like the debate.
This is it's good. I knew you could handle it. I was happy that.
I hate it here.
Yeah, you want to leave right now. You're like the damn dog and everything else, but. No, I mean, hey, move forward.
By the way, I didn't sneeze on you, did I?
No, you did not sneeze on me. It's cool. Move forward, but do a little fixing along the way. Accountability, fixing, transparency, whatever it is. But I hope in companies and industries, it's you're always going to make room for innovation, but let's have a top 10 list of things that let's improve, that are actually causing our workforce stress or causing our users stress, that could be better. And probably those things don't take as much work and money. I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing they don't take as much work and money as doing something new does.
I'd like to see the digital company that creates, especially a Facebook, for instance. Yeah. Create almost like the food chart for digital consumption. Remember the food
Oh,
chart from
yeah.
like
Man,
middle school?
now you
It's
speak
like,
my language, my
here's
friend.
how much time you should
You're
have on your
speaking my language.
device, how much face-to-face time you should have, how much time with friends, how much time on your laptop, you know, all these things. Because you're right, which you touched on earlier, is sort of your physiological health is being affected by these things.
So in your interviews, so his whole show, he's interviewing innovators. You remember me because all I'm talking about right now is the difference between feel-good relating and fast food relating and fast food content. And like really, you know, we're getting filled up, overfilled by a lot of the stuff that's out there and undernourished by it. And our relationships are suffering. Our brains are like, oh, no, I've got all this information up here, but I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a chart is, I'll probably be the one creating that chart and be TED talking about it because it's everything that I'm thinking about. I'm seeing the effects of it. I experienced the effects of it. I turned off all the notifications on my own phone because I watched myself after having this relationship with this device where it was interrupting me at all times. I watched myself self-interrupt and you know, be not able to really like stay on task or complete a task or, you know, or even be available to do this, which, you know, at the end of the day, like what's on our tombstones? A great dad, you know, wonderful. It's about how we related in the world. It's not about anything else. It's not like he had a great yacht. I mean, you could put that on your tombstone, but we would think you're a douche. So, anyhow, all right. Here's a much. We won't go as heavy. This is a fun one. This is a good one. So, blockchain turns Pied Piper's internet fiction into reality.
Yes.
So, Silicon Valley HBO show Pied Piper is the fictional company that they're talking about building a whole internet based on our phones, like a peer internet, so it's not based on like big servers.
Right.
And of course, like blockchain, the technology for bitcoins and all that stuff, that's actually happening. Yeah. So what do you see? You probably know a lot more than I do about blockchain and stuff. What are some of the fun things that could happen and are being developed right now?
What's blockchain again?
What's blockchain again? Come on.
No,
How would you explain blockchain, just in case someone's listening that doesn't?
Here's the best way I learned it when it was first coming up. It's just a visible ledger of who's done what in terms of coding, almost like a Google Doc. Right? If you and I are sharing a document or like there's 10 people on it, I know who changed what at what time because of your your digital signature. And
but it's not centrally stored somewhere. It's kind of like bits and pieces are stored.
Right, and so it's decentralized in that regard. So it's allegedly, I'll say why I said allegedly in a minute, less susceptible to corruption and things like that. And I deliberately used the phrase less susceptible because I personally believe that anything we build can be corrupted.
Yeah.
And it's also human nature. I mean, that's why there's hacker culture, right?
Yeah.
Because now what we've sort of done is issued a challenge. Right, there was a website I frequent. No, just kidding. I don't frequent it, but it's a great example. No, almost. It's Pornhub. Last year, can we talk about Pornhub on your show?
Sure, let's talk about Pornhub.
Last year, they issued a bounty, a $25,000 bounty to their users to see if they could spot flaws in the blockchain. And I think in most of these instances, like looking at what the adult industry is doing in terms of development.
So backing up, the porn industry is already using blockchain.
I mean, there's a lot of industries that are using it, and it's also being used in places where, like for marketing campaigns, just to like, if we created a piece of content, it's ours, and we know if somebody like took the file and edited it. So there's a lot of different things that happen. And then you start to look at the Internet of Things and how, the accountability, or like if my whole house talks to my car, talks to my grocery store, talks to the pizza person, it's like, all right, I didn't order that pizza. Yeah, you did. And so it's like those sorts of
like the
practical examples.
There's an example of Alexa calling 911 on spousal abuse or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they didn't really do it.
I was telling Eric a story earlier. But
Eric's in the studio. He's a studio guest that's with B behind the camera's dog, who's not feeling very well. So we're just a motley crew of wellness over here. Or unwellness, but yeah.
There was a kid who has a really funny video online, but he probably like 2 years old, couldn't say twinkle twinkle correctly.
I saw this video.
And it's, I'm I'm going to say this on your show too.
I'm going to find the video and I'll post it. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
exactly.
It's
and the kid
hilarious.
goes, Alexa, play Dicker Dicker. And, like, couldn't say Twinkle Twinkle, and Alexa thought it was referring to a penis.
Yeah.
And like pulled up this porn content, and then the video just ends abruptly because the parents are like, "Hey!"
No. The kid's like, what did I do? Yeah, I'll find it and I'll share that in our.
So again,
it's actually
like,
funny.
but I think there's flaws in
Yeah.
all of it, and I think if we assume that something is the end all be all, like we're just mistaken as members of society.
Can we just slow down a little bit? Is it pop?
Unfortunately, I think it's up to the individual to, like, I think
you can slow down your intake, maybe. Like we all need to be more personally responsible about what innovations we allow into our lives. Is that maybe like a good way to look at it?
Or even what you use it for. I mean, a guest on my show is a guy named Chris Dancy, who was on the cover of Wired magazine a few years ago as the most connected man in the world, right? He has like a connected belt that helps his posture. He had a connected collar on his dog that helped him like figure out like what was causing his dog to get sick. And then he's like, oh, actually I became a better driver because I realized when I was hitting turns, it's like you look at the graph, that's when the dog was feeling the most nauseous, right?
I want to know how his relationships are.
Well, that's the thing though. Is like, and then I'll give you the last example is that he'll be on the, like if he's on his phone, you say you were talking to your mom, and like most of us, sometimes our conversations with our parents don't go as we planned. He's like, but if
Never, Mom.
but if his voice goes over a certain decibel, the lighting changes in his house to calm him down.
Yeah.
And for most of us, it's like that is just way too much stuff. And here he is, actually a Buddhist.
Yeah.
And so he's actually using it to achieve what technology is supposed to give us, a little bit more tranquility, a little bit more calm, a little bit more service.
Context is what I hear in that, because
Exactly.
if you're in a situation and you find yourself getting heated or somebody else is, and then you match that with more heat or more intensity, probably not the best, best way to help the conversation or the solution move forward. So I like things that help us have better context of our, our ability to see the circumstance of the situation.
And he's like, and he lost weight, but that's one example.
Yeah.
In a sea of millions of technology users, aka abusers. So how do you like strike that balance and just realize I've seen families out there just yesterday, Sunday, was at a restaurant. And poor mom was trying to talk to her daughter, must have been like 14. It was like, oh, they have whatever they had. And she was like, I don't want cheese. It's like just barely, engaged. And so, and even parentally, like it's up to the parents to like figure out like what's the best system for you. Is it 20 minutes at a time? Is it none at the dinner table? What's the rule?
That brings me to the last question I'm going to ask, because we're actually running out of time. Do you have any rules with your family and your children about technology? Like, is there a go-to, like, this is how it's done in Daddy's house?
And smash it.
Yeah.
My daughter's 12, doesn't have a phone. She's like, I'm the only one in my class. I was like, you'll see why later.
Yeah.
But even already.
What age are you going to let her have it?
I think between 8th grade and high school, maybe like that summer. I hope she's not watching though.
Uh-oh.
Because don't watch.
He's talking about his other
5
daughter,
minutes ago.
the other family.
Right. Like my other family in Connecticut. Now you just outed me.
Yeah. It's not in Connecticut.
No, but and so it is. It's a 20-minute rule. I mean, we have stuff at the house, and I think there's sort of like free use of Amazon, Alexa, and Echo, but if it's screen time, it's just like there's a time that's cut off. At our dinner table, there's no devices at the dinner table, and even to the point is like the point of debate, right?
Yeah.
If I say, hey, have you heard of this thing? Oh, who's that actor? We immediately go to our phone instead of actually using the exercise of using your brain
Memory.
is like a debate and conversation and dialogue, and it's like we're losing that ability to sharpen each other just through dialogue because we go like, oh no, that's not true, and then the first article that pops up may not even be correct.
Right.
Did Einstein say all those things? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like Einstein said. Did he ever work?
Check it out. Fact check. All right. Yeah, I like it. 20 minutes. maybe holding off to the cell phone. This is awesome.
Yeah,
And
there's no science, by the way. It's just me as a.
well, I mean, there is no science to parenting, is there?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you just do the best that you
My
can.
5-year-old son is a whole different story. But
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
save that one for later.
You don't have technology rules for him yet, right?
Yeah, he did figure out the password to the iPad.
Oh my
So
God.
I was like, hey, yeah. So I should back.
That's awesome and scary at the same time. All right, well, we are at the end of this show, so there's one last. You missed the whole random questions because this was such a good conversation, and really.
I was also trying to stay hydrated.
Yeah, you
'cause
just-
you taught a good lesson at the beginning. Of the
Yeah. We have to stay hydrated. So there's one last thing that we do on Relatable, which is called Heartswell. And it's just, first of all, the intention is, or the why behind why I asked the guests to do this is because, if you've ever not understood what I stand for, I think the opening monologue is very clear about I really have concern about how we're relating. And I want to just show more examples of people relating on a deep level and show that it's not that scary to share deep emotion towards another human being. And so a Heartswell is simply that, is just giving a shout out to somebody that's made a difference in your life, that deserves some kind words to them, that maybe you haven't said something in a while, or maybe say it every day, but you're just willing to kind of go publicly and go, hey, this is how I feel about this person, and I want everybody to know. And I encourage people watching to find a moment to have their own Heartswell moments with people in their lives as well. So does someone come up?
Terry, you son of a... No, just kidding.
It could be that too. I mean, I like the
I don't even know
idea of
anybody named Terry.
forgiving somebody, or saying, hey, at the time it was kind of a negative experience, but you've taught me something. Hey,
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is this is kind of fresh. My mom called me the other day. Sometimes depending on what I'm doing, I'm like, I can't, because I know it's going to be a long conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't.
Is she still in Detroit?
Yeah, she's still in
Shout out to
Detroit.
mom in Detroit.
Yep, exactly. And I answered it, and she was like, "I'm just going through your book for the second time." She read the book as a second time. I mean, I kind of expected her to be, excited about it.
Yeah.
But then was telling me how she was telling her friends, and then she said, "I might even start a business." And I'm like, it was such a weird. We touched on this before. Your relationship with your parents, for some of us, can be a little rocky, and because I'm the only, I have one of my siblings who moved halfway across the country. I feel a lot of disconnect from
Experience that.
Exactly. So knowing that I probably don't call as often as I should, or don't check in as often as I should. She lives by herself, and even I'm smart enough to know that that's as you get older, loneliness is a big cause of death. It's just so.
Why do you think I care about relating so much?
Right. So the fact that maybe it almost sounds a little self-centered, but the fact that I think it was indicative of what I wanted to create with that is kind of what you're talking about, recalibrate human connection, and even the book really focuses more on soft skills than coding and things like that. But to get that call from my mom, and a call that I almost ignored, was actually pretty heart swelling in and of itself. So.
Life affirming, so you just want to say, hey, Mom, I love you?
Hey, Mom, I do love you. Thank you for all your support. And she actually even brought up stuff oh, you used to do this when you were a kid. And I was like, I did. So just to even have that connection, thank you.
Everything's connected. Your mom's kind of validating the hard work that you put into this.
Exactly.
Sweet, man. Bet you didn't expect to be talking about that.
I didn't.
Yeah.
It was it's serendipitous timing.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, we went over, but it was worth going over for. You were worth going over for. I think we covered some pretty good ground here, and I really appreciate you listening. I'm sure you didn't expect all the stuff that I shared at the beginning. I was a little concerned for you. I'm like, I hope he doesn't feel like I'm attacking innovation. I'm not. I'm just
No, I did not feel like you were being combative.
You're, the king of innovation, but you care about it, and you know about it.
I prefer the Fresh Prince.
Oh, Fresh Prince? All right. I'll make sure that I refer to you that way in follow-ups. So that does bring us to the end of the show. I want to thank you so much for being here. You can learn more about Chris on his website, thecrush.co, and he's Densonology everywhere on social media. And of course, I'll share all that. I'll share the links where you can get the book. And everything that we talked about some funny videos. We've got a lot of good stuff
Yes.
that I'll share in the archives. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And next week, I'm really excited about this too. Totally different tone we're going to take next week. August McLaughlin will be here. She's the author of Girl Boner, The Girl's Guide to Sexual Empowerment. This is probably going to be a adults-only show. She also has a podcast by the same name, Girl Boner. So we're going to have some fun with that. Chris, we usually issue a social challenge of the week,
Yes.
just something people can try, something around innovation. I mean, we could say read your book, but what else could we, like, anything come to
Why don't we
mind
do
about
an anti-challenge?
an anti-challenge?
Yeah.
I
and
love it.
like actually stay off of social media for a week.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
I don't know if that does you any good.
Yeah.
But
Well, either of us.
from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think, like, can you fast? Like,
Yeah.
can you take 72 hours?
Seven-
72-hour fast.
72-hour fast off social media.
Yes.
All social media.
Yeah. Let's.
I like it.
Friday to Monday.
Friday to Monday. I like it. Let's do it. If you guys do it, you can reach out to Chris at Densology. You can reach out to me at Love More Now on Twitter or Relate with Steph on Instagram. Let me know how that works out for you. And as always, you can find the archives to the show at stephaniemichele.com. And I'll leave you with the same words that I leave you with every week. Just relate with more curiosity. See you next week. Bye-bye.